Welcome to Character Design for Animation. I'm Lauria. I'm your host today, and today I'm going to talk a lot about people that I've had associations with, like Chuck Jones, Tex Avery, Kimball, some of those folks. I go way back. I go back to the era of Hawaiian shirts and jeans for animators. I was telling someone before, I was in a security line going to China one time, and I ran into John Lasseter of Pixar and Disney, and he was in Hawaiian shirt and jeans. So it's our uniform that we use, so at least for our era. I'm going to talk a lot about, you see with the characters we have, we base everything on simple shapes. And the reason we base everything on simple shapes is they're easy to turn and easy to move. So if you take a character like Bugs or you take a character like Daffy and you break them down, you'll see that at the very heart of them, the essence of them are simple shapes. And all the details and everything are added later, but we do start off with simple shapes. And I'll show you some other things as we go along. We also, let me tell you a little bit about my background. I've been doing animation direction for over 36 years. Made my first film when I was 17, and that was 43 years ago. But started working professionally 36 years ago. And animation's all I've ever wanted to do. I came upon it in high school, and that was it. And I was drafted during the Vietnam War, came out, went to school out west, and actually that's where I met Chuck. I was out in Los Angeles, and I saw that he was one of the advisors to our school. So I called him up and said, hey, I know you're one of the advisors of the school. I got about 5 or 6 people that want to come down and talk to you about careers in animation, which was a complete lie. I had no one, but I figure if Chuck said yes, it would take me about 5 minutes to find folks to go down and talk to him. So he said yes, and I went down, and it took me 5 minutes to find 5 or 6 other people that wanted to find out about animation. And we went down, and he actually spent about 2.5 hours with us. And I was amazed at that, because as busy as he is, at that point, he had his own studio, Chuck Jones Enterprises, and it was actually on the corner of Sunset and Vine in Hollywood. And the most intimidating thing about going to see him is his studio was on the 12th floor in a place where there's earthquakes. So that was kind of weird. But a lot of the folks that are listed on this cartoon are folks that I know and that I met. Benny Washam, one of the animators, was my first teacher in animation. Phil Monroe was a fellow that I learned a lot of stuff from, a lot of information about animation from. Maurice Noble, the layout artist for this one and for many of the famous Chuck Jones films, like What's Opera Doc, which we're going to see, and just all of them. He was a layout artist and background artist. So he was really amazing. And he actually worked for Chuck until he was 96. So they had a very long association that way. A lot of the films that Chuck did, he wrote with Mike Maltese, who was a writer. So Chuck would write and Mike would write. And they had this very interesting dilemma back then, which is all the films had to be 6 minutes long. So they had to try to sculpt a story and characters and stuff like that, and they had to finish at 6 minutes. And that was it. And the reason they had animation at all is back then they had block bookings, which means if you wanted Casablanca from Warner Brothers, you also had to take a couple animated films with it that they could add on to the tab. And that's the reason they had the unit at Warner Brothers that they affectionately called Termite Terrace, because it was kind of in the bottom of this building off on one of the side lots. So that's Chuck. I met Chuck in 19-something or another, around 1971. No, wait a minute. Yeah, about 1971 or 72. And knew him right up until when he passed away. And actually this year, or this year that we're celebrating, 2012, 2013, is the centennial of Chuck's birth. So he was born in 1912, and in September of 1912. And it's just really was animation's intellectual, because Chuck could talk about anything. And he was so well read, and so he knew about geography, history, literature, any mathematics, science, anything you name it, Chuck just knew about it. And usually when he started talking about all this stuff, my reaction was like, because he was just so amazing. And he actually was a master of timing. If you look at all the little glances and stuff, actually reminds me of Johnny Carson, because I don't know if you all remember who Johnny Carson is, but or Jon Stewart on The Daily Show. Jon Stewart does all these little glances, and he does those little moments of thought that makes everything funnier. Well, Chuck was that way with all of his characters. He'd always have them stop and think. And because the character thought, we always felt closer to that character. You always feel closer to a character who's thinking than a character like Jar Jar who just goes off and does stuff, right? We've talked about Jar Jar in my classes before, that I hate him. But well, I mean, Goofy is this dumb character. This is my example. Goofy's a dumb character, but we love him because he's always thinking. He may do stupid stuff, but he starts off thinking, okay? With Jar Jar, he just does dumb stuff. So there's that. Now, one of the things I did when I was at school is I actually got Chuck to come to the school and talk to the students, which was really great. And my first teaching I ever did was with Chuck Jones. I just finished working on the Star Trek movie. I had designed and directed all the sequences on the Starship Enterprise screens. And I just finished that, and I was talking to someone out in Los Angeles, and they said that Chuck was going to teach a class at my alma mater. So I actually just packed up my car and left. And I just figured, I was going to go out there and just work for free just to be closer to Chuck. So I did that. I packed up everything, went out to Los Angeles. He started teaching a class, and I was helping him. About halfway through the class, he was working on the Ragged Ann and Andy Christmas caper thing, TV special. So I took over his class. So that was actually my first real teaching. And it was scary, but it was, especially following Chuck. But he was an amazing teacher, an amazing animator. Years later, I brought him to Ireland to the Dublin Film Festival, and they gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award. He made all these Catholic jokes, which was kind of interesting. And actually brought Wearing of the Grin, which is one of his, it's kind of about, about the little, what are they, leprechauns. So it's about all the little leprechauns, which the Irish kind of don't hold to. They don't like the leprechaun thing. But, I think Chuck knew that, but he brought it anyhow. And I was amazed to find out that it was the first time Chuck had ever been to Ireland, because he is always quoting George Bernard Shaw and all these other people, Jonathan Swift, everyone, but he had never been there. So I was kind of amazed that he had ever done that. But he was a real influence in my life. He really did a lot in terms of, he always was talking about full animation and how important that was for audiences. He did a few MGM Tom and Jerry's, which were really limited, and he really didn't enjoy that at all. The ones that we're going to see today, the Bugs Bunny, and some of his characters, he's one of the fathers of Bugs Bunny. He created Pepe Le Pew, the Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote, all those. So those are actually his character that he created. And he actually had an internet series going for a while, too, until he passed away. So he just decided he would, continue on. He just continued on with animation. And he really became the elder statesman of animation, that there wasn't any one person that everyone could go to. Chuck was the guy. So I really, grateful to have spent that time with him. And even when he came to Ireland, when he started talking, we were in a room with 300 people, and he talked for 3 hours without a break. And you could have heard a pin drop. I mean, everything he said was just really amazing and wonderful. And not only myself, but all the students sat in the audience going like that. So, and later on, I'll ask you, or we'll take questions and stuff, and I can elaborate a little bit more. The next person I want to showcase is, I want to show one more Chuck, actually. Let me go to the menu. This is another one of Chuck's ones. We'll just show this one. This is Drip Along Daffy. And one of the things I love about this is that the posing for the character is really strong. When you talk about character design, one of the things that's really important is you have really strong posing. And that's to do with, when Daffy was trying to lift up the frame on the Duck Amuck, if you look at that, that was really, really strong posing because you had a character that's essentially painted black, surrounded by black, and the reason he read it all is because of the silhouettes that the animator created when he was pushing off so it could be read, all the way to the back of the theater. And that's one of the things animators are always doing. I always tell folks that animation is closer to theater than it is live action. So when you're posing your character, you're posing him 3/4 this way and 3/4 that way. You don't pose straight on like that because the character just flattens out. And there's no reason, you lose the character at that point. So by having a strong silhouette and posing a little bit like this, or when Daffy went like that, you can see what he's doing even though he was a black character and silhouetted. Now, Chuck used to talk about that shootout scene all the time. And one of the things you'll notice is he kind of did a reversal of the normal thing. Normally when they start out and two characters are walking towards each other, to build intensity, they get closer and closer to the character. Well, Chuck wanted to throw that off a little bit, so they started up close and got further and further away until the little military man came over and shot the other guy. So it was just kind of a reversal that he was playing around with. I've got one more I want to show you of Chuck's. If I can get it in here and move along. And that's his favorite film was actually One Froggy Evening. The one with Michigan J. Frog, the little guy that sang, "Hello, my baby, hello," that one? Okay. So, John, don't tell anyone I sang. But anyhow, that was one of his favorite films. Another one was What's Opera Doc, which is a classic film. They kind of made that in response to Disney making Fantasia, so it was made in the early 40s. One of the truly amazing things about that film is the colorization of it and how Chuck used the colors in the intensity to bring out the anger with the reds and stuff like that. Yellow's a color of hope, so that's why there's all those yellows at the end. And of course, obviously, it was Maurice Noble's layouts that were really, really terrific. One of the things that Chuck did is, at an early age, is he started drawing. His father loved to go into business for himself, and he always went out and purchased the very best paper for his letterhead and things like that. But his father's businesses always failed. So Chuck and his brother and his sister always had lots of drawing paper. Because of these failed attempts to do a job, they'd have all this letterhead left over of the really fine linen quality. And at an early age, Chuck, started to draw and showed a propensity for drawing. And later on, went to Chenard, which later became Kyle Arts. But so he was an amazing draftsman. It was just great to I've got some of his drawings at home. I didn't bring them today, but it's just really amazing stuff. So. And keep in mind that Chuck was one of 5 fathers of Bugs Bunny. There was Chuck, there was Tex Avery, there was Bob Clampett, there was Bob McKimson, and I think even Frank Tashlin, who was a Disney animator who moved over, did a Bugs Bunny too. So lots of fathers of Bugs. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next person here. I was really fortunate. Let me get this out. Okay. These I had all on DVD, and like I said, this is the centennial of Chuck's birth. So there's celebrations actually going on all over the world about his work and everything. So we're going to, since I mentioned Tex Avery, we're going to ease into Tex Avery. When I was in school, the head of our department, Jim Jordan, he was a director, commercial director. He did the Meow Mix commercials. Remember those? Well, you got to be known for something. But I mean, he was really successful with these Meow Mix commercials. And he worked at a studio, Cascade, down in the old part of Hollywood. And they had these sound stages down there where they shoot the commercials. Well, it turns out that their animation director they had on staff was Tex Avery. And Tex Avery was a great director from Warner Brothers and MGM. I think it was at MGM. And he did a lot of classic films. I'm going to show a few of them today. But with Tex, he had a whole different sensibility when it came to humor and that kind of thing. I mean, Chuck was very erudite, tried to use a really intelligent approach to set you up as far as the humor goes. Even in Droop Along Daffy, where he says, I want to go to Europe. You know, he did those kind of things. With Tex, everything was open. Anything went. I mean, as long as he could get a laugh, he would try anything. And I had the good fortune to spend 2.5 hours with him one day. I had a storyboard of a student project I was working on, and this fellow, Jim Jordan, head of our film department, said, well, why don't you go down and see Tex Avery? Would you like to see him or meet him? And I go, yeah. I mean, this guy was like one of the animation gods. So I went down and spent some time with him. It was very bizarre because he didn't have an office like everyone else. He was like, it would be like his desk was out in the hallway, right? And between two sound stages, and they were shooting a mattress commercial the next day. So the Teamsters were walking back and forth with mattresses the whole time we were talking. It was very bizarre. But you know, when he first came to Cascade, they didn't know who he was. They didn't know that he was this great film director from the 40s and 50s and even 60s. And he kind of got rediscovered when they were doing, remember the old Raid commercials where even some of the ones nowadays where, you know, they have big double takes with the characters and they end up being exploding and all this other stuff. Well, when the commercial house got this contract to do the Raid commercials, they said, you know, we should get that guy who did like Red Hot Riding Hood and all these other films. They didn't realize that he was actually already on staff. He was already their animation director for their production company. So Tex did a lot of great work. He took a lot of heat at one point too, because you know people considered his cartoons violent, but you have to remember that these weren't made for kids. In fact, Chuck would always say, you know, we didn't make these films for the audiences; we made them for ourselves. We tried to entertain ourselves, and we figured if we can make ourselves laugh, then we can make other people laugh. Well, Tex was the same way. I mean, Tex, like I said, would do anything, and this stuff is really extreme, or considered extreme, where you have eyeballs popping out and all that other stuff. So, but anyhow, I went down there with my storyboard, and Tex very patiently went over everything. And of course, I didn't know anything about staging gags or that timing and stuff like that because I was still in school. And he spent the time going over my drawings and drawing over them and redrawing drawings and stuff like that. And I actually still have all those drawings. But he was absolutely amazing to listen to and work with. Like I said, he received a lot of heat during that time because of the perceived violence in his cartoons, and that was during the Vietnam War and stuff like that. People were wondering if maybe that his animation was making us as a people more warlike, which could be further than the truth, but you know, I guess people were looking for scapegoats at that point. I actually went to some of the presentations he had at UCLA and other places where he was booed when they first introduced him by some of the folks who were like anti-war activists and stuff like that. So, and this is after I'd been in the service. I thought, oh, you got to be kidding. So, and again, they had to work to that 6-minute rule. So I have a few. One of his most notorious films is called Red Hot Riding Hood. And I'm just going to play it. It has Woofy, the character Woofy, and the animation for the girl in this is done by Preston Blair, who did the Dance of the Hour sequence from Fantasia, but he moved over later and worked with, I guess it was MGM on this stuff, and he did the dancing of the girl he did without reference. He just did it. And it's all straight ahead animation, not pose to pose like a lot of our animation, but just, you know, drawing 1 and 2 and then 3 and then 4, and then you'll see what I mean. Okay, so Tex Avery, a few years ago on a Cartoon Network, they had films that they did like the top 50 films of all time. And actually the number one film they came up with was this next one. It was, at least back then, it was voted #1. It was a Tex Avery film, and it's called King Size Canary. And again, all these characters are done with very simple shapes, just like you either use a ball or an ovoid and then make it turn. So a lot of times we just put axis marks on it and that kind of thing. I'm not doing the drawing thing today because we're not set up for that. We'll have to do that another time. But still, you can see the character design in all these and how the characters are basically constructed from simple shapes. And then you keep adding and adding and adding, and it makes it a lot easier to work with. And it's nice to know that because it doesn't matter whether you're doing 2D or if you're doing CG, everything starts with simple shapes. Or if you're working with CG, you start with simple forms and keep building. So this is called King Size Canary.
Well, forget it, see? I've seen this cartoon before. And, brother, believe me, if you're smart, you won't eat me. Because before this picture's over, I save your life.
Yeah, but I'm hungry.
Well, okay then. In the next room, you'll find a great, big, fat, juicy canary. Eat him. Boo. Well, see, chum? It's like I said at the beginning. I told you I'd save your life, didn't I?
Yeah, gee, thanks a lot, old pal.
And here's the little bottle that did the whole trick. Well, so long, Shorty.
So long. But hey! I'm still hungry.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna have to end this picture. We just ran out of the stuff. Good night.
So like I said, with Tex Avery, anything goes when it came to humor. If it was a sight gag, it was something that was written on the wall, some offhanded comment. I mean, he was always going, he was always getting in trouble too. So the last one I'm going to show is one that some of you may have seen before. It's called Northwest Hounded. And it's really kind of an exercise in doing cartoon double takes. Where characters exchange expression, where they'll be like this, and then they go, squash and then stretch like that. So we're going to see a bunch of that. Only I can't do the exaggerated faces he can do on his characters. So one of the limitations of being a human. Preston Blair again.
Attention, men. This criminal has just escaped from ALKA-FIZZ prison, and I'll need volunteers to go out and bring him in. Now, all those who wish to volunteer, take one step forward. Ah, Sergeant McPoodle. Pull of you, lad. Pip, pip, cheerio, carry on, chin up, stout hearter. Good boy, tally ho, they'll always be in England. Pip, pip, cheerio, pip, 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 pip.
Pip, pip to you, too.
Foxy won't.
You're covered, Joe.
Who threw that?
I did.
Hey, let's go to the airport. Here you are, bud.
Thank you, sir. Pilot to co-pilot. Do. Happy landing.
Yeah, I know. He'll probably be right under that rock.
Nope, under this one.
Oh, no! No, 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 no. Not that, please. No, 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 no.
Hello, Joe.
Watch the plastic surgeon and how much he changes.
Hey, Doc, I gotta have a new face. Give me a new face, Doc. Come on, give me a new face.
Oh, no! No, 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 no. Not that, please. No, 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 no.
Change it, Doc. Change it.
Okay.
Thanks, Doc. That's the last straw. I give up. I'm gonna throw myself to the lions.
Crowded, isn't it?
Well, Opie, he finally got me. But there's just one thing that's bothering me. I wonder if there could have been more than one of them little guys.
What do you think, brother?
So you can see that's a kind of the crazy, wacky world of Tex Avery. He would do anything to get a laugh, and that was pretty much the way he did it. Now I want to move on to another person who was really influential in my life, and that was Ward Kimball, one of Disney's 9 old men. I met Ward. I had gone to Art Center for a term, had dropped out, and then on the way back home to Virginia, I knew that at some point I'd be going back and finishing. So I stood out a turn, kind of got everything back together again, went back out, and the first class I walked into, it was this old guy, old guy, he's like my age now, But there was this old guy, and he had like these really thick, round glasses like this. I mean, he looked like a cartoon character himself, and was standing up there making jokes to the other members of the class. And it was a storyboarding class I was walking into, and that's when I first met Ward Kimball. He was the teacher of that class. He was, like I said, one of Disney's 9 old men. He did Jiminy Cricket, 3 Caballeros. He actually won 2 Oscars, I think at least 2 Oscars. One for Babes in Toyland, where he co-wrote the screenplay, and that was given an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. And also he did a short called It's Tough to Be a Bird, which is kind of long. I'm going to show you a little bit of it, but it's very Kimball-esque. And he got into all sorts of things when he was at Disney. He was not only, like I said, one of the 9 old men and did Jiminy Cricket and all these other folks, but and animated on a lot of short films and features, almost every feature. And the 9 old men were the cadre of animators that Walt Disney really depended on. Some people will tell you there was probably 20 old men, but these 9 have been singled out as the folks that worked with Disney the most as far as directing and stuff like that. And Ward was the only person that Walt Disney said he thought was a genius that worked at the studio because he was so amazing in everything he did. He was a fantastic artist. In fact, how he joined the studio was he had gone to art school in Santa Barbara, and this is during the Depression, and he just had enough gas money to go down to Los Angeles and interview at the studio. And he did that. He took his portfolio. He went down there fresh out of art school, and he put his portfolio into Disney. And the folks in Disney came back and said, "That's great. We'll let you know." And Kimball said, "Wait a minute. I've only got enough money to go back home from here, so I need to know today whether I'm going to get a job or not." So they went back and went over it, and he was, like I said, he was a fantastic artist. So they came back to him and said, "Yeah, we're going to hire you." So he went back and collected his things, got some more money, and came back and started working at Disney. He worked in all aspects. He like I said, he did writing, but he also did a lot of directing, a lot of producing. There was a TV show on for a few years called The Mouse Factory. He did all that. He was also very much into music. He started the Firehouse 5+2, which was this little band. They kind of got together, and they started out like going down to Disneyland and performing on the weekends just for the heck of it. And it was him and Frank Thomas and a couple of the other, I think, 3 of the other animators, or 7 altogether, Firehouse 5+2. But so if you knew who they were during that period, if you went to Disneyland, you'd see all these animators. You wouldn't know they were animators, but they're sitting there, and they'd had their, the fireman's hats on, helmets on, and the suspenders and red shirts and all that. And Kimball played the trombone. So he was always very musical, and he organized this group. And they actually did a bunch of recordings, and they appeared on the Mickey Mouse Club show and all these other things. So everything he seemed to touch and worked on turned to gold. He did one of the original scripts for 3 Caballeros, which is one of Disney's features. He was a person who was also big into training. When I met him, he lived in San Gabriel Valley, and I went to his house and shot a film about him and his works, and I wish I had that footage. It's gotten lost at this point. The other person with me, Jim Proctor, had it, and we've all moved several times, so he doesn't have it anymore. But he had this train collection, this huge train collection, and he collected from the 1870s to the 1940s. And he had 2 rooms at his house. Together, they were almost this size, okay? And one side was American train, and you go through the door, and the other side with 220 current was European trains. So he was big into trainings, and he got Walt Disney. I know I'm getting toward the end. He was the one that actually got Walt Disney into training. The story goes that Walt, because of his job tensions and stuff like that, and he and Lillian were having a hard time having a child. So he looked around the studio and he said, now, who's relaxed around here? And he saw Kimball, and he said, Kimball always seems to be relaxed. So he started talking to Kimball about trains and stuff. And what they used to do for a while is Ward would take his wife, Betty, and Walt would take his wife, Lillian, and they would jump on the train in Los Angeles and train for the whole weekend. They could go out to Kansas City and then grab another train and come back. And off of those trips, the Disney family conceived 2 daughters. So it worked. But Ward had 2 full-size trains in his backyard. Not only did he have his train collection, and I went there, and we did this film about Ward, and this stage reminds me of when we first went to film Ward. We just said, we're going to come down and do some footage. Well, we arrive at Ward's house, and there's like a full-size boxcar in the front lawn, okay? And he had like 100 yards of track. He had a big piece of property, and he had 100 yards of track that went to the back, and he had a shed for his engines. And he used to have all sorts of problems, like during the war, they wanted scrap metal and stuff like that. They tried to take his engines, and he wouldn't let them do it. I think he did everything but lay across the tracks. But anyhow, we got there, and they had this boxcar, and we get out of the car, and we walk up, and the opening shot of our little film was we have this boxcar, and the door swings open, and there's Ward Kimball dressed as a conductor, okay? And he still had, the big, thick, round glasses and the black conductor's uniform and all that other stuff. And he said, okay, he started directing the film is what he started doing. He said, okay, I should open the door, look around, and I'm going to jump down from the boxcar. And I go, okay, Ward's like in his late 60s at this point, so he's actually older than me. But so the boxcar was about like this, high off the ground. So Ward would open the door, he'd look around, and then he'd jump out of the boxcar. And we thought, that was great. And he goes, no, I can do it better. So he did this over like 6 times. I thought, okay, I'm going to be the guy who was responsible for killing Ward Kimball. So he did it over and over again, and then we went back and shot his trains, and he would direct us and say, okay, I'm going to be here in my cab, and I'm going to do this. And he went back and put on an engineer's outfit, and said, I'm going to do this like this. And we have a light. We put up a light, and he said, now pass your hand in front of the light, so it looks like he's traveling and there's things passing by. So we spent a day shooting, and it was just the most amazing experience because we got to see all of his trains, and we took a lot of close-up footage of that, and also about Ward himself. But Ward was one of these guys, he was just out there. He was the person who was always trying things new at the Disney studios. Later on, and he would get in trouble for it with Walt all the time. But the thing about it is, he always came out smelling like roses, and everything worked out for him. Like when he did a short called Toot, Whistle, Plunk, and Boom, which I think was also nominated for an Academy Award. But it was about music and about the different, the woodwind section and the percussion section, the horn section, all that. But it was done in a really flat style. It was done in what they call UPA style, United Production Artists, which were Disney hated that style because those folks were folks who were with him. A lot of those folks were with him, and after the strike in the 40s, they left the studio and started UPA. And they had more of a poster type, graphic style to their animation, not the full character type stuff. So, and that was kind of the going trend. So when Ward did Toot, Whistle, Plunk, and Boom, he did it in that style. And Disney never liked it. So he also did Man in Space. Somehow he was able to come up with von Braun, who was the top scientist. He was a German scientist who had defected to America after World War II. And he was our top guy as far as, planning trips into the space. And somehow he got him on camera and got him to narrate this whole thing he did on the U.S. and their aspirations to go into space and space travel. And that was a really well-received program. Disney wasn't that enthused about it to begin with, but it was so well-received that, Ward couldn't help but, he just was very fortunate that way. And like I said, he was such a genius. I told you I met Ward when I was in school there. I also had action analysis with Ward, which is where he would take a model, a life drawing model, and pose them into different poses and show how you could take that pose and push it to make it more extreme. So it was a really good class, and it was not only good for animators, but it was also good for illustrators or anyone else, because we found that even illustrators, once they took that class, they had put a lot more action in their characters, even in just like one still drawing. And he did a lot of classes at Disney, for the folks there. He later on, one of the things I've done in my career is I was head of a European School of Animation, and I came back to take this job and kind of relax for a few years at the Disney Institute, which was this resort, but we had people drop in anywhere and they could learn animation. So we had guests in there, and I'm going to use guests with little quotation marks because some of them are absolutely crazy. And we also had professionals that would come in and get trained up. A lot of gaming companies sent their animators there, and we'd work with them. So it was kind of cool because we got to work at a lot of different levels. Well, we were also able to bring people back and have them come and be at the Institute. I tried to get Chuck Jones to come to the Institute, but Disney said, no, he's Warner Brothers, he can't come. I thought, but he did work for Disney for about 3 months. So I got Ward to come back, and they had the first Imagineer, his name was Frank Broggie. And, he was the guy that helped build the parks and design them and everything like that, but they named a train after him. They also had trains named after Walt and his wife Lillian, and also Roy Sr. The next train they named was the Ward Kimball. So they had a special ceremony, and Ward came back to Walt Disney World, and so when I was working at Disney Institute, and we did a whole show, and it was great. And because Ward was there, I had to spend 5 nights in a row eating dinner with him, which was like really tough. And it was great. I mean, all the stories. He was also the practical joker of the studio. So he would go and, he was the one that came up with cellophane over the toilet. He had one really extensive practical joke where he went and made all these U-shaped wooden things, and he went to the Salvation Army and bought all these skirts and pants and stuff like that and shoes, and he snuck into the studio at night, and he would set it up where there'd be pants and shoes in the men's, and in the women's there'd be skirts and shoes, and he'd lock all the cubicles, or what are they called? But anyhow, he went through and locked them all. So, and knowing that when people came to work, they would come to work and looking to use the restroom. Well, they would go to use the restroom, and there wasn't any way to get into the restroom because all the stalls were locked. And along about 10 o'clock, someone just thought that maybe someone had a heart attack because the same pants and shoes had been there for hours. So they broke down the door and discovered and he was always doing that with everything. He was always trying to figure out practical jokes. He had a guy next to him who had a Volkswagen, and he would go, and he was always talking about what great gas mileage his little Volkswagen Bug got. This is when they first came out. So Ward started, after a while, adding gas to the guy's tank. And all of a sudden the guy's saying, yeah, in my last tank I got like 78 miles to a gallon. This is amazing. And then he'd go back, and Ward would start siphoning off the gas at night. And the guy's going, I can't understand it. I'm down to like 5 miles to a gallon. I don't understand what this is for. So that was Ward. I mean, and those are the ones I can tell you about. He did some pretty outrageous things. But he did come to the Institute, and we had a chance to spend a lot of good time together. And there was one director he couldn't remember that he used to room with. And a few weeks after he left, he sent me a letter and said, oh, this is the guy, because we had pictures up in the studios of all the old animators, and he couldn't remember who it was. And it wasn't David Hand, it was one of the other guys, one of the directors from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So Ward was really amazing. I'm going to show you a little bit of his work. I can't show it real long. How long do we have? We have until 1:15. So I'm going to show a couple of things real quick. I'm just going to show you snippets because his things are longer. I'm going to show you a little bit of It's Tough to Be a Bird. The ones that I've shown since Chuck Jones, and I have a whole bunch of them. I have like 135 films that I've gotten off the internet through YouTube and stuff like that. And it's a great way to get a collection. And these are all little snippets off of that. Actually, I'm not going to show you Tough to Be the Bird because it's so long. I'm going to show you 3 Caballeros. He was the one that did the dance sequence for 3 Caballeros, and it was made into a short film. So this is about a 2-minute clip of it.
Welcome to Mexico. Son of a gun, it's a pleasure to see such fine gentlemen in Mexico.
But he did all 3 characters of this sequence.
Jose! Caramba! Now we're 3 gay caballeros. Yeah! We're 3 caballeros, 3 gay caballeros. They say we are birds of a feather. We're happy amigos, no matter where he goes. The 1, 2, and 3 goes, we're always together. We're 3 happy chappies with snappy serappies. You'll find us beneath our sombreros. We're brave and we'll stay so. We're bright as a peso. We say so, the 3 Caballeros. We have stars to guide us. Guitars here beside us to play as we go. We sing and we samba. We shout, ay caramba. What means ay caramba? Oh yes, I don't know. Through fair or stormy weather, we stand close together, like books on a shelf. And proud so we may be, when some Latin baby says yes, no, or maybe, it's night for himself. Ay, con aterraje, me sale del alma gritar con calor. Abrir todo el pecho, pero ya este grito que el himno de Jalisco palabra de
So there you go. That was an example of the brilliance of Ward Kimball, because he said when he did that sequence, he really tried to throw every filmmaking rule and everything he had out the window. If he wanted to have someone exit this frame and then come in this side, he would do that. And he wanted to have that freedom. He worked very rough. He really liked to put a lot of spontaneity in it. Obviously, these characters are designed the same as the other. And you can see the influence where, the posing's like this and the posing's like that. And even with the center character, it didn't leave it flat. He just kind of moved it to one side or the other. It was really amazing. He did a film, or he did a book called Art Afterpieces, where he did like The Last Supper and stuff like that. And you'd have it at the end of the table would be Mickey Mouse at it with the apostles and stuff like that. And he went through all these great works of art, like Blue Boy and all that. He did Blue Boy, but he did it as a painting with Donald Duck. And it was actually a bestseller. And he ended up going on Johnny Carson show and some of the other places. I was in his class when we went on the Johnny Carson show, and he said that Johnny Carson was really trying to loosen him up, so he gave him the little coffee cup he had was filled with vodka. So I think Johnny did that to all his guests. Maybe that's why some people went on there so often. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to show you a little bit about Toot, Whistle, Plunk, and Boom. Get rid of this one. And just a little bit of it, and then it's a 10-minute piece, but we're not going to do that. Just to show you the design style. Because the character design style on this is very different. Like I said, it's the UPA kind of design style that Walt hated, but this was so well received because it was educating people about about music and about instruments in the orchestra and that kind of thing. You can see how flat it is. Walt didn't like this at all. Again, this is on the internet,
Today
so...
we're going to study about
Ancient history,
Love and mystery,
mathematics,
Acrobatics.
reading, spelling.
storytelling. No. The study of musical instruments is the subject for today.
the study of musical instruments is the subject for today.
Did you ever stop to think when the band plays rinky-tink where all the music comes from? From a toot and a whistle and a plunk and a boom.
That's where the music comes from.
Did you ever understand that a symphony so grand, so bright and yet sentimental
And a toot and a whistle and a funk and a boom
are very instrumental, for the horns go toot.
So you can see how flat the design style is. It's not a design style based on simple shapes and everything like that. I mean, there are simple shapes, but they keep them very flat on purpose. We're kind of going a little bit long on time, so...